Hi, welcome to the BrainShark course for Robot for Every Person. I'm Brandon Knott, and joining me is Diego Lamonto. And today we're going to walk you through this presentation, which takes our company vision and shows customers how they can make it a reality. Each company will implement a Robot for Every Person uniquely. Therefore, it's really important to understand the value of the program and understand how to position it to a customer based on their goals, based on where they are in their journey. In this presentation, we're going to walk you through the details of the program so that you can explain it and set that context with your customers, as well as give you access to additional resources for common as well as advanced questions. A robot for every person is a key theme of the 20.4 release, but this vision is not new. This conversation is not new. It's something that we've been doing as a company for years. And as you start talking with your customers about this, it's great to talk about what we've learned along the way, how we've used it, customers that have challenged us. Let's be humble in our approach, acknowledge that this is something that has been a long time in the making, and now in the 20.4 release has really come to fruition. Virtually every company can benefit from a robot for every person, but you might find that there's some criteria that will help you prioritize in your initial sales motions. And these are things like overall size of the organization. Larger companies have more employees, can run more attended automations, and can generate more value quicker, for instance. Also, the relationship with the C-suite is very critical. A robot for every person is unique to each company, so you'll need an executive to help craft the narrative within their organization that fits their goals and objectives. Let's get started. Diego and I will walk you through the material as if you were a customer and also give you some tips and tricks along the way. So let's talk about personal productivity. Most of us are very familiar with business productivity and that narrative right now. That's what we've been selling unattended automation on. We are building value for the business. When we talk about a robot for every person, we're speaking differently. We're now talking about how people work. Take the pocket calculator, for instance. Once that came onto the scene, nobody was using slide rules anymore. It changed the way that people did business. The PC came along. People were starting to abandon typewriters. It changed the way that you were interacting. You went from having to be perfect as you type to being able to revise and put thoughts into a digital space, working, again, differently. Then the internet comes along. We're no longer sending memos. We're emailing. We're communicating virtually and collaborating. The mobile device comes out. We are now able to take calls wherever we want to be. We are freed from the office, freed from these things that typically we've associated the work environment with. The robot assistant is the next evolution in this story. When you have a robot on your desktop working alongside you, or you have access to a robot directly, you are going to change the way that you work. You are going to be freed to think differently, to act differently, to function at higher levels. In a Gartner study, 25% of digital workers were estimated to use a digital assistant by 2021. This is a steep curve, but we're already on it. We're seeing the adoption from our largest customers, buying hundreds of licenses, thousands of licenses for Studio X and for the robot.
Okay, so clearly, as Brandon just went through, these major waves of personal productivity innovation, have come and really changed the way people work. And Robot for Every Person is the next one, as really the world is starting to see. But when we say a robot for every person, what do we mean? There's been a lot of internally here, just between us at UiPath, we've had this definition out here. And there've been different definitions throughout the organization, but we sat down, we brought the people who are really on the cutting edge of this, the people inside product and sales, the CSMs, the people who are out there talking to customers, and customers themselves and analysts, and we really looked at what do we mean by this, and this is the definition that we've come up with. A robot for every person empowers people, right? People to work smarter by using software robots that help them with everyday tasks. What's neat about the way that our product works and what we've seen there in use cases is that it can be simple or complicated. It doesn't have to just be simple tasks. When you start bringing AI in, they can get more complicated. But the point is that it helps people work smarter. The robots assist them with the everyday things they do that robots can do for them. The other side of this, and I think this is a really important part of this definition, and we've really seen over the last couple months and year as Studio X came online, is that they can build their own automations, right? You have people out there, we're going to get into the definitions of who is building their own automations, or they can use the automations governed by their company, provided by and governed by their company. They don't have to be the automation creator. They just need to be someone who is using automation. That's part of a robot for every person. The CoE can deliver the robots to the end user, the business user, who may not be technically sophisticated, but they still get a lot of value from a robot handling their tasks. That really gives the people the freedom to focus on the human part of their work. And when you think about, on the personal level, how much value this brings to a person, then you also think about it from the company level. Just imagine, when you're talking to your customers, bring them along and help them imagine what their company can do when they free their people from the mundane, right? They give their people freedom to work faster, right? They get things done faster. They spend time on the more creative and higher value tasks that really humans are better at. They can collaborate more with their peers. They have more time to do that. And oftentimes, the work is actually more accurate when done by a robot. So even though this is a personal productivity, story and pitch, it helps the organization greatly. And those benefits roll up into meta benefits for the organization. A couple of things that we've seen in the customers we've talked to already, they're excited because it puts digital transformation on every desktop. When new innovations, new automations that change the way they do work are created, it's instant. They can deliver it to the end user desktop. It targets the real bottlenecks to personal productivity, right? I work differently than Brandon works. Although we're in the same team, we're in the same company, we do somewhat similar work. Even product marketers, we work differently. This helps people target the bottlenecks to the way they work, and you can't do that with a widespread general automation. So it really helps get that build on that. It gives the workforce the modern tools they demand, right? So people coming out of college, they don't want to do mundane stuff. They want that stuff taken care of them by technology, and you're satisfying the needs of this new generation. And it builds resilience in process in advance of future economic shocks, right? The more automated your company is, the more protected you'll be in case we have other unforeseen events that really change the work, and it builds that resiliency in.
So here's an example of how we can start the value conversation. And it's a simple example, so it's important that you caveat it when you give this presentation to a customer. I like to say, I'm going to do some straight line math and show how the value of 20 minutes a day against a $35 per hour employee can generate large savings, $30 million. Note that we're not talking about cost avoidance here. We're not talking about employee satisfaction or customer satisfaction. We're going to talk about that later. So this is a nice place to say this is just an example. We're talking about how that 20-minute savings can give you big returns. And later on, I'm going to talk more about some of the other value drivers that might be relevant to you in different ways. Coming off of the example, now it's time to open up the conversation. We're going to do this by identifying some goals that our customers and that your target customer has, how a robot for every person can address those goals, and what the results are expressed in some KPIs. It's important to spend some time with this slide before you present it. Make sure you go through, and even better is to have an example from your experience on how a customer has taken one or more of these lines and converted it into a success. One of the more common questions that I get is, show me examples. You've talked to me about the value, you've explained how it works. What's an example of it working? This slide starts this conversation. I like to say that there are different categories of attended automations and a robot for every person scenarios. And here are just 4 from personal productivity, things that I would be doing regularly doing the out of office example that you've seen from Bogdan, checking my 401k perhaps. These are all things that I can automate just for myself. Stop my day. We have scenarios where customers can save time merely by automating the logging into applications, which is trivial from an implementation standpoint, but very valuable when you start taking that time out. You have specific departmental activities, finance, HR. Every department has activities that are specific to that department, are only relevant to that department, and it's important to be able to show to different departments and show companies how those departmental specific examples can benefit them. Lastly, we have training and enablement. We can speed up the hiring process in HR. We can guide people through different instructions and learning paths on the applications with callouts and forms. So understanding the categories of examples is going to help you, because you're going to be able to pick a category that resonates with a customer rather than trying to find specific use cases too soon that may or may not directly resonate.
And so, you know, aside from just talking about it, let's see it in action. And so here's a video. Now, we're not going to play the video here on the BrainShark course, but on this slide will be a video that you should watch, be able to talk to, and let the customer see it actually in action. Okay, so now that we've explained why this is hugely valuable and what it means to an organization, and we've even shown you what it looks like, let's talk about how to bring it to life. And much like any other transformative technology, it's not just the technology. It's the people, processes, and technology working together. So let's go through that now. Okay, so let's start with the people. So there are a couple of different types of people inside the organization that engage with automation. It's the consumers of automation, it's the creators, and it's the controllers of automation. Let's start with the consumers. These are your end users. These are the employees. This is actually the biggest population. These are the people who are not technically savvy. They're not going to build their own robots, yet they could really benefit from working with robots, right? They're going to work with automations provided to them centrally. And they may even suggest their own ideas for the work that they don't want to do, or the work that sucks, or the stuff that they just know could be done better by a robot. That's the first type. And then you have the creators, right? And we'll start off with citizen developers. There's two types of citizen developers. You got the self-users. These are technically savvy employees that develop automations for themselves. They're going to learn Studio X, and they're going to say, I do this every day, and this is my work and unique to me. No one else needs this, but I'm just going to build this thing because it'll save me an hour a day. Then you have the power users. Those are also tech-savvy employees. They're very similar to the self-users, except they also share their automations with their team. They're building it for their department. They're really like sort of the tech leader for their group, their tribe. And so they'll use Studio. They'll also use Studio to build their automations. They may progress a little bit further than a self-user with product they use. And then you have the RPA developers, and they're building the more complex automations that go company-wide, that may be more sophisticated, that are really determined by the COE and built at scale. And then you have the controllers of automation, which is your COE. And this is where the governance comes in. The CoE centrally governs all the automations, and this is really important. Your customers are going to want to talk about this when they get to a robot for every person. You're going to hear it, so you want to bring this part in soon and let them know and make them feel safe and let them understand that we've built in governance. We're providing it for the CoE, and we're giving the CoE all the tools they need to govern the program and facilitate the company-wide usage of a robot for every person in collaboration with IT.
Now let's talk about some different approaches. Most people are familiar with the top-down approach. This is how unattended automation works today. You have the CoE. These decisions are being made on what automations to prioritize and build out. The same is true for attended automation. The CoE can prioritize, build, and distribute automations to those consumers. Next, we have the bottom-up approach. This is our citizen or developer-led most of the time, and we'll talk about some scenarios in a minute. People are starting in Studio X, or they're starting in Studio, they're building something, and then that can be promoted up to the CoE or can be consumed just individually. The power of this model happens when these two approaches come together, and you have the top-down and the bottom-up. Top-down is focusing on corporate initiatives, governance, prioritization. Bottom-up is innovating, finding new scenarios, and those two working together gives you the best of both worlds. Next, we'll walk through a couple scenarios, and I encourage you to familiarize yourselves with these because this makes it real for the customer. We'll start with the CoE-led. This is similar to classic unattended automations where the CoE is using Automation Hub or some mechanism to prioritize their automations. The RPA developers are using Studio to build those automations, and then Orchestrator to distribute those automations. Finally, our automation users will consume those automations using an attended robot or apps or an embedded experience or another scenario where they are essentially interacting with the robots. Then there's the bottom-up approach. Most of the time, a citizen developer will start by opening Studio or Studio X and beginning a build very ad hoc. And at some point, they'll realize they have something there. Then they're going to move to Automation Hub. They're going to submit that idea. They're going to show the work that they've done. If the CoE likes that automation, they'll take it. They may wrap it in some governance structures that they have. They may harden the code a little bit and then distribute it out via Orchestrator just like they would any other process. And again, our automation users are consuming those in whatever way makes the most sense. So how these come together now in the hybrid approach, we essentially have our citizen developers starting from the ground up, having ideas, innovating. We have our CoE that is looking after the corporate objectives, looking after governance, pushing automations from top down, and all of these developers, whether they're self-users, power users, RPA developers, they're all riding the same governance rails. They're all deploying the same way through Orchestrator, and users are able to consume these automations no matter where they come from, making sure they're consuming them from the CoE, and the CoE is making sure that that governance is in place.
Okay, and so now that we've talked about, how to get it done, the people, the process, and technology, let's once again talk about the value it delivers company-wide. And there are three pillars of value. It's the cost savings and efficiency, it's the quality, and it's the satisfaction pillars, right? And additionally, what's great about Robot for Every Person is that it extends the dimension upon which you're delivering these three pillars, right? So you're getting value at the employee level, you're getting value at the department level, and you're getting value at the organization level. I'm not going to go through each of these, but if you think about satisfaction, for example, you have happier people, right? Happier employees, right? Your department is performing better. Everyone's getting more proficient and they're delivering on their departmental goals. And then at the organization level, you're driving increased customer satisfaction. And these are very similar to the common values of RPA, but put in context of the Robot for Every Person, it really extends the scope and dimension of the value delivered. And here's where governance comes in. We've mentioned governance several times in the presentation. But governance is not just one thing, it's a collection, and it aligns to the idea of people, processes, and technology, just like Robot for Every Person program. So, for people, you have things like, bringing HR in to manage the people aspect, make sure they have the required skills by persona, ensure, documenting and outlining who does what, just like we did earlier in the program. From a process perspective, you have the controls, approval processes, really have that robustness and best practice that, guides the journey along the way on automation. And then from a tools perspective, built into the product, we have monitoring, able to facilitate through Automation Hub and really have the controls in place, things like blocking specific applications from being automated. Those are all the things that the COE really needs to have in place to ensure proper governance. And the thing, to remember when you present this, don't get in a rabbit hole here, don't get stuck. This is just to show that governance is a really important part of the program. And if they want to go deeper in this, just set up the next meetings, right? Defer to conversations with pre-sales, business consulting, your CSM, and professional services. Okay, and then so as you bring the conversation to a close, you want to bring back the meta positioning for the company around our hyper automation platform, right? Because a robot for every person exists within the framework that we've developed and we've been promoting, for the last couple of months. We have the platform to help you discover, build, manage, run, engage, and measure your automations. And that bringing all of those components to a robot for every person strengthens our differentiation. So that if anyone else is coming at them and saying they can do what we can do with attended robots, or they have a governance, they don't have everything that we have, and you cannot deliver it to the extent and scale that we are able to do with all the governance, all the components that the customers need to be successful without the end-to-end platform. So come together, robot for every person and hyper automation together, no one can deliver this. You bring it together that way.
Every customer or potential customer asks, show me someone who has done this. Sometimes they want to talk to the company. You need to be able to have a couple quick examples. And Ericsson has an incredible COE and way of selecting automations that extends well beyond just RPA. Is also part of their digital transformation. But most importantly is the UiPath story. And even though it's smaller, it shows that we are eating our own dog food, drinking our own champagne. Pick your favorite analogy, but essentially we are consuming our own technology. We're learning from it. We're getting better. And here's where, if you haven't already, perhaps you should open up your UiPath assistant and show them how you are using automation on a daily basis. That's a very powerful story.
And from there, the next step is to continue the conversation. And the way to do that is to show them that we have the roadmap for making a robot for every person real at their company. They need to set the foundation. We can help them with executive visiting sessions, find those executives that are going to support it, help them with the strategy and design, set up those meetings to help them do that, right? They need to establish their key processes. What is the value? What is the ROI model? What does business process intake look like? We can help them with that. You can set up those meetings to help them figure that out. And then in terms of building a path for growth, what does their citizen model look like? How are they going to roll out attended? What does governance look like? What are all of these things that they need to figure out? We can be their partner along the way, and these are the next steps that you can take with them to get them going on the program.
So as we mentioned earlier, your ability to demo both Studio X and UiPath Assistant out of the gates at any time, anywhere, is really critical. It lends legitimacy to the sales conversation. It shows that you identify with the customers, and you are going to be able to talk more effectively about what this program is and why it's beneficial when you're familiar with the tools. This is just the beginning, though. We've got demos to set up for everything from apps to the embedded experience to our AI story. This is a launching pad into those other narratives as well, but you should be able to demo Studio X and Assistant at any time. Here are a couple quick links to that content, and as well, we've got a Slack channel for Robot for Every Person.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to the course. Brendan gave you the links to reach out if you had any questions. And let's get out there and let's make a robot for every person a reality in all your customers today.